So good morning students. So we'll start with the class. So in the previous video I had taught you about the gastroesophageal reflex. So what is this gastroesophageal reflex? So then in this completely what is that, how it is managed, what are the symptoms that we can see, how it is caused, what are the diagnostic tests we have to do in order to confirm with this gastroesophageal reflex. So completely we had dealt with that. So in this video we'll start with the next topic, that is congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. So what is this congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis? So this is a condition that results due to thickening of the circular pylorus. Okay, so this is a condition that results due to thickening of the circular pylorus, causing obstruction of the gastric outlet. Okay, causing obstruction of the gastric outlet. So this is a condition that results due to thickening of circular muscle. Okay, this is a condition that results due to thickening of circular muscle. Okay, it is a condition that results due to thickening of circular muscles of the pylorus, causing obstruction to the gastric outlet. Okay, causing obstruction of the gastric outlet. So this is usually believed, okay, this is believed that it usually occurs due to combination of muscular dystrophy. Okay, it is believed that it usually occurs due to combination of muscular dystrophy, spasm and also muscular dystrophy, spasm and edema of mucous membrane. Okay, and edema of mucous membrane. So that is congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. It is a condition in which it occurs due to thickening of the circular muscles of pylorus that usually causes obstruction of the gastric outlet. So this is believed that it is usually occurs due to combination of muscular dystrophy, spasm and edema of mucous membrane. And if it occurs congenitally, okay, it is usually called as congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. Okay, if it usually occurs congenitally, okay, it usually occurs congenital. Congenital is nothing that is usually present from birth. Okay, it is usually present from the birth. So that is usually in that case, if it is occurring present from the birth. Okay, if it is present from the birth, usually it is called as congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. So that is, what is congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis? It is a condition in which it usually occurs due to thickening of circular muscle of the pylorus that causes obstruction to the gastric outlet, and it is believed that this obstruction or this thickening of the muscles usually occurs due to a combination of muscular dystrophy, spasm as well as edema of the mucous membrane. Okay, edema of the mucous membrane. So this, if it occurs from the birth, okay, if it is occurring congenital or if it is occurring from the birth, it is usually known as congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. Okay, congenitally hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. So that is usually there. So next we will see what are the causes of this stenosis. Okay, causes of this stenosis. So this usually it is seen that it usually, I have told you that it occurs mainly due to the combination of muscular dystrophy, spasm and edema of mucous membrane. Along with that, it is also occurring, it is inherited disease. Okay, it is also a inherited disease. So there is increased risk in siblings. Okay, there is increased risk in siblings as well as offspring of the affected person. Okay, there is increased risk in siblings as well as in the and also to the offspring of the affected person. So that is usually seen that. So it is believed that it might be due to muscular dystrophy, spasm, edema of mucous membrane or inherited disease. Okay, it is usually inherited disease. And this disease, this congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis, it is usually develops in the first few weeks of the life. Okay, it usually develops in the first few weeks of the life. So in the first few weeks of the life, it mainly causes projectile vomiting. Okay, it mainly causes projectile vomiting. So it is usually seen that it is seen in the first few weeks of the life, and then it is more common in the first child. Okay, it is more common in the first born child. Okay, it is more common in the first born child, as well as it is common in males compared to females. Okay, it is common in males compared to females. So that is usually about this causes. So causes, it has been, I have told in the definition only that it is caused by muscular dystrophy, spasm and edema of the mucous membrane, and also it is an inherited disease. So this is having like there will be a high risk, or it is inherited, and they are at risk, like siblings are at high risk or offsprings of the affected person are at high risk. And this is usually common in the first born children, as well as it is common in males compared to females. It usually develops in the first few weeks of life. Okay, it usually develops in the first few weeks of life. Okay, so this is usually about the causes and the risk factors of this congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. So what is congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis? So there will be thickening of the circular pyloric muscles of pylorus that usually leads to or causes obstruction in the gastric outlet. Okay, obstruction in the gastric outlet, and as if it is present from the birth, then it is usually, or it is known as congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. So causes we have seen. So now we will see what is the pathophysiology. What is the pathophysiology of this congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis? So normally this occurs due to hyperplasia as well as hypertrophy. Okay, normally it usually occurs due to hyperplasia as well as hypertrophy, and this is due to this hyperplasia and hypertrophy, the circular muscle of the pylorus enlarge. Okay, so due to this hypertrophy as well as hyperplasia, okay, due to this hypertrophy and hyperplasia, the circular muscles of the pylorus gets enlarged. Okay, circular muscles of the pylorus gets enlarged. Okay, due to both hypertrophy as well as hyperplasia. Okay, due to both hypertrophy as well as hyperplasia, the circular muscle of the pylorus, okay, the circular muscle of the pylorus gets enlarged. Okay, it gets enlarged, and then due to this there will be narrowing of the pylorus canal. Okay, there will be narrowing of the pylorus canal between the stomach and duodenum. Okay, so due to this there will be narrowing of the pylorus canal. Okay, there will be narrowing of the pylorus canal between the stomach and the duodenum. So what is it? So mainly it occurs due to hyperplasia as well as hypertrophy. Due to this, what happened? There will be enlarged, or the circular muscles of the pylorus gets enlarged. Okay, the circular muscles of the pylorus gets enlarged, and due to this enlargement, what happens? It usually leads to narrowing of the pylorus canal between the stomach and duodenum. Okay, narrowing of the pylorus canal between the stomach and the duodenum. So the canal between the stomach and duodenum gets narrowed. Okay, due to this enlargement of the muscles of the pylorus, the canal usually gets narrowed. Okay, the canal usually gets narrowed, and that usually leads to inflammation and edema develops. Okay, that usually leads to inflammation as well as edema develops, and the size of the lumen, okay, the size of the lumen reduces. Okay, the size of the lumen reduces. So when the size of the lumen is reduced, okay, when the size of the lumen is reduced, then there is complete obstruction. Okay, when the size of the lumen is reduced, then there is complete obstruction. Okay, when the size of the lumen is reduced, so there is complete obstruction. So that is usually about this pathophysiology of this pyloric stenosis. What is that? Due to hypertrophy and hyperplasia, that usually leads to like the circular muscles of the pylorus gets enlarged. Okay, the circular muscles of the pylorus get enlarged, and this usually leads to narrowing of the pylorus canal between the stomach and the duodenum. Once there is narrowed, inflammation starts occurring and edema starts developing. So once the inflammation starts developing, there is obstruction. There is like the lumen gets size of the lumen gets reduced. Okay, size of the lumen gets reduced. So once the size of the lumen gets reduced, then there is complete obstruction. Okay, then there is complete obstruction. So that is usually about this pathophysiology of this. So next is clinical symptoms. So what are the symptoms that we can see in this case is that, so I have told you in the etiology and the risk factors that they might have projectile vomiting in the beginning of the first few weeks of the life. Okay, in the first few weeks of the life, they will be having projectile vomiting. And this, what is this? Pyloric stenosis starts second and third week of intrauterine life. Okay, it starts at the second and third week of intrauterine life. Okay, so that is they have projectile vomiting, and then they usually have that. It usually begins at the second and third week of the intrauterine life, and then they will be having fluid loss, like severe fluid loss. Okay, they will be having severe fluid loss due to this dehydration they will be having, and due to this dehydration the baby becomes lethargic. Okay, due to this dehydration it usually baby becomes lethargic as well as malnourished. Okay, the baby becomes lethargic as well as malnourished. And next is usually what happen. Like they will be having a palpable mass. Okay, they can feel a palpable mass in the epigastric region. Okay, in the epigastric region, just right side of the umbilicus. Okay, just right side of the umbilicus. Okay, so that is usually what happens. So they will be having when we are palpating, we can feel a palpable mass in the epigastric region, just right to the umbilicus. Okay, just right to the umbilicus. So that is usually there. And then fail to thrive. Okay, they will be unable to thrive. Okay, so they will fails to thrive. So this is usually about this symptoms that is usually seen in case of this pyloric stenosis. So that is projectile vomiting. It usually develops second and third week of the intrauterine life, and they will be having severe fluid loss. Dehydration will be there. Due to this, the baby becomes lethargic and malnourished, and they will be having palpable mass around the epigastrium region, just like right to the umbilicus. Then fails to thrive, and also the peristaltic movement will be visible. Okay, the peristalsis will be visible. Okay, peristalsis will be visible. So these are the symptoms that is usually seen in case of this congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. So next is diagnostic evaluation. So what are the diagnostic evaluation that we have to do is that history should be collected. Okay, history should be taken. So history should be taken regarding the vomiting, like what is like vomiting, whether peristaltic waves were visible or not, whether peristaltic one is vomiting, history should be collected, then visible. Peristaltic waves were visible or not, that has to be asked with the mother. And then we have to palpate. Physical examination should be done. So for that, so physical examination is mainly done to got the presence of palpable mass in the epigastrium region. So that has to be done. So history should be collected. Physical examination should be done. History is collected mainly to check out the like vomiting, like at what vomiting should history should be collected regarding the onset of vomiting, like when the vomiting started, how long the vomiting was it, or when the vomiting occurs, whether it is after feeding or after before feeding. So all these things should be asked with the parents. And next we have to go with physical examination. Physical examination we have to go for checking the palpable mass in the epigastrium region. So that is usually done. Radiography has to be done. Ultrasonography should be done. And then barium swallow examination should be done. Okay, barium swallow examination should be done. So this will disclose about the narrowed pyloric muscles. Okay, this will disclose about the narrowed pyloric canal. Okay, narrowed pyloric canal. Then laboratory findings like blood test, everything should be done. So that is usually about this diagnostic test that we usually give. So diagnostic test that we usually do, it is mainly history collection, physical examination, radiography, ultrasonography, barium swallow examination, and laboratory findings. So next is treatment. So what are the treatment that we have to do is that first thing is that fluid loss will be there, so that we have to correct the fluid and electrolyte balance should be maintained. Okay, it should be corrected. Okay, fluid and electrolyte balance should be corrected, and then stop feeding. Okay, we have to stop feeding, and then we have to go with stomach wash. Okay, we have to go with stomach wash. So this stomach wash is done mainly to reduce edema of the stomach wall, because I have told you in the pathophysiology they develop inflammation as well as edema. So therefore we have to stop feeding, and then we have to go with stomach wash to reduce the edema of the stomach. So that is usually about this thing. So then we go with surgical procedure. Surgical procedure that we go, it is mainly known as Ramsted's pyloromyotomy. Ramsted's pyloromyotomy it is done. So in this what we do is that the thickened muscles of the pylorus will be divided. Okay, will be divided along the length of the pylorus. Okay, the thickened muscles of the pylorus will be divided along the length of the pylorus, so that mucosa will be seen. Okay, so this is divided until the mucosa is seen. So that is usually done. And after this surgery, that is Ramsted pyloromyotomy, this surgery what we do, the thickened muscles will be divided at the length of pylorus until we see the mucosa. So after this surgery, the baby can be fed only after 18 to 24 hours. Like the baby should be fed only after 18 to 24 hours with small quantity of clear fluids. Okay, with small quantity of clear fluids. Okay, with small quantity of clear fluids. So that is usually then antibiotics can be given as per advice to prevent infection. Okay, antibiotics can be given as per advice to prevent infection. So this is the management that we usually do. So the management that we usually do, it is that mainly we have to stop feeding, and then we have to go with stomach wash. This is mainly done to remove the edema, to reduce the edema. Then fluid and electrolyte balance should be corrected. Then we go with surgical procedures, that is Ramsted pyloromyotomy. In this usually we what we do, that the thickened muscles of the pylorus will be divided along the length of the pylorus. Okay, will be divided along the length of the pylorus. and this is until the mucosa is seen. So after this surgery, the baby should not be fed until 18 to 24 hours. So after this 18 to 24 hours, the baby should be fed, and the baby should be given only fluids. Okay, the baby should be given only fluids. So that gradually, and the fluid should not be given at a stretch. It should be given little. So we have to observe for vomiting. Okay, we have to observe for vomiting after giving this fluids, and then antibiotics should be given in order to reduce the infection. So this is about this congenital pyloric hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. It's nothing but it is a condition where the circular muscles of the pylorus get thickened, causing obstruction of the gastric outlet.